Hillary has been lengthening her excuses as to why she lost the election. She didn't really lose the election. It was stolen from her by, I think it's up to 24 different excuses she has now. Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia. And as I said, my grandfather was a Macedonian content farmer, and we often think about, gathering on the porch and recalling the old days on the Macedonian. He never thought that the old content farmers he left behind in Macedonia would one day steal the U.S. presidential election. They are gnarled, hard-working Macedonian peasants, and the way they were able to reach out and steal the election from a well-oiled machine headed
Obviously, 2020, the year of the coronavirus, has dealt a blow to economies around the world. And yet some, such as the United States, are picking up rapidly and doing better than the experts have predicted. Macedonia is not immune to the negative economic effects of the pandemic. But Macedonia faces not only the pandemic, but a leftist government that believes passionately in the socialist mindset. The party of Zoran Zaev, the current prime minister, is the Social Democratic Union of Macedonia. But before independence in 1991, that party was the League of Communists of Macedonia. And anyone who knows history knows that the communists destroy not only lives, but also economies. So Macedonia and the Macedonians face not only the pandemic and the loss of their name, identity, and dignity, but an economy hobbled by a government that knows very little about free market capitalism and how to spur domestic growth and job creation while attracting foreign direct investment. For instance, even before the pandemic, in 2019, Macedonia managed to bring in only 365 million euros in FDI, foreign direct investment, while neighboring Serbia brought in a staggering 4.5 billion euros. Even neighboring Albania brought in nearly 1.3 billion euros in FDI. We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin in Skopje, Macedonia.
Cvetin, before we jump into the economy, we need to point out that today is October 11, and Macedonians celebrate this day as the day of the National Uprising?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's October 11, 1941, when the Macedonians rose up to fight against the fascist occupiers, the Bulgarians.
Yes.
Let me say that again: the fascist occupiers, the Bulgarians. And it's ironic that that we're recording this on this day today. This is episode 89, again Sunday, October 11, when today the Bulgarians, the fascist occupiers, are really trying to put the screws on Macedonia. And the Zoran Zaev, I think, came out today and said that the country needs to be prepared for a veto from Bulgaria. Just as a recap for listeners, the Bulgarians have been pushing these many years after the so-called quote-unquote friendship treaty was signed between Macedonia and Bulgaria back in August of 2017, 3 years ago. The Bulgarians have been pushing for the Macedonians basically to say that they're really wayward Bulgarians. Goce Delchev and other heroes were Bulgarians. That they're that the Macedonians are quote unquote a new nation, etc., etc., etc. So it's really it's a major attack on the Macedonian identity, language, and now Zaev is actually saying that Macedonians might have to prepare for a veto. Macedonia is supposed to open up accession talks with the EU finally sometime this fall. But Bulgaria is threatening to put that veto on them. It strikes me, though, as odd that Zaev would actually say that he wouldn't say, okay, now we have to give in. What's going on?
Yeah, he had a horrible response from Bulgaria. He sent Foreign Minister Bujar Osmani there to prepare for a meeting, for Zaev's visit later in the year. And it didn't go well. Osmani was apparently supposed to meet Zakharieva, the Bulgarian foreign minister, but Boyko Borisov crashed the meeting, and he always does this, when you exchange those pleasantries at the start of a meeting, like how was the weather, how was your flight, blah, blah, blah. Borisov keeps the cameras rolling for like several minutes and gives a lecture to the visiting official. And in this case, he was very... this really slippery approach, we really want you to open accession talks. It would be horrible if you happened not to open accession talks. Now is the chance with the German presidency of the European Union, blah, blah, blah. You need just to be reasonable and, do your homework in accordance with the treaty. In fact, he's saying, he makes it sound like he's helping Zaev, but in fact he's the one who's going to veto the country, who's going to veto Macedonia. It's a very ugly approach. The Greeks have perfected it, but it sounds even worse from the Bulgarians because, you kind of expect it from the Greeks, but not from the Bulgarians. And then Zaev now said, listen, the part of the meeting with Borisov was actually the good part of the meeting. And it was all downhill from there when Osmani was with Zakharieva. They're obviously going to issue some demands. Zaev did not specify if it's anything more on top of Goca Delchev. Bulgaria wants Macedonia to sign off Goca Delchev to them. He didn't say what else. But the memorandum the Bulgarians sent, it was really bad with the language and nationality and God knows what else.
There's the issue of the language. I think the Bulgarians are demanding in that 6-page memo they sent to the European Union countries that if Macedonia opens accession talks with the European Union, anywhere in any of those talks for the next 10 years, when it should refer to the Macedonian language or something, then according to the Bulgarians, it should be quote, the language of the Constitution of the Republic of North Macedonia or something like that.
I double-checked the treaty. It says Macedonian language in accordance with the Constitution of Macedonia, a Republic of North Macedonia, and then they say either use this whole lengthy form like we are now Macedonian nationality, but / citizen of the Republic of Macedonia. You can't use Macedonian standalone as a national description of our nationality. Or at the very least, Macedonian and with a footnote.
Right.
At the end.
Really, yeah. It's convoluted. It's a bit complex. It's linguistic gymnastics. But the simplest way to define this is the Bulgarians are simply doing whatever they can to deny the existence of a Macedonian identity, a Macedonian people, a Macedonian language. It's almost as if you had a 1-2 punch with the Greeks and the Bulgarians many years ago deciding that this would be the way it works out. The Greeks deny the name, then the Bulgarians deny the identity and the language and everything else, and finally basically strangle the country and strangle the people, so to speak. I don't know if it's been, because you've got so many different players from so many different parties, opposite parties in both countries, etc. I don't know if it's that coordinated or not, but it sure seems that way. But what's your best prediction then? Is Zaev going to, if he came out today and said that Macedonians need to be prepared for a veto from Bulgaria, I'm positive he'll cave in and agree with the Bulgarians to whatever they want.
Maybe they want the whole memorandum out front. I'm not sure. They're, laughably for the whole situation and for Zaev, given his character, Bulgarians are sounding angry at him for not, almost like, he promised that he's going to implement all this, and now he won't do it. So, at least not on our time, on the agenda we foresee for this. So they're like, he betrayed us. That's so ridiculous at a time when, we told them, listen, these guys, it's such a turncoat, the leftist party, SDSM, they were pro-Serbian. Now they were anti-Western for so long. Now to be installed in power, they claim to be pro-Western and the only pro-Western party, and and ready to accept any Bulgarian demand. And all the while, there was this hilarious scandal when SDSM people were in a coordinated move. They were filling in positions reserved for Albanians. Under the Ohrid Treaty, we have to have 25% Albanians in the public administration. So you get names, obviously Macedonian names, 1 or 2 Vlachs. All of them, you track them down on Facebook, SDSM party supporters or coalition parties, and they all say they're Albanians. And I was posting some messages at some of the Bulgarian members of parliament. Listen, these are the people you expect to be the tip of the spear of the Bulgarian consciousness in Macedonia. They will sell their own mothers for, to whoever comes along. So And today, there are two new moments. One is that the Bulgarians are now angry at Zaev for even having an event to celebrate October 11th, which was obviously, as you said, uprising against the Bulgarian army in Macedonia.
Right.
Bulgarians don't like when it's mentioned that at this time of the war until, what was it, 43, they were allied, obviously, with the Axis. They were allied with Germany, and as such, were given Macedonia after Germany occupied Macedonia as part of its attack on Yugoslavia and Greece. So now, this was a big holiday, especially for the left in Macedonia. Their whole project rested on the fact that their fathers, their grandfathers fought in World War II against the Bulgarians, and they kept repeating, even more often than you did in the intro, Bulgarian fascists, Bulgarian occupiers. This was their whole mantra, their whole thing. And now they're not allowed to even mention the word. I mean, Zaev and Pendarovsky were careful not to mention Bulgaria in their statements today. But they still said, okay, we fought on the side against fascism, and they still had an event. And now even this is not allowed. The Bulgarian member of the European Parliament, Kovachev, sent out a message, in this disappointed tone, like, we trusted you, Zaev, why you do this to us? We had such high hopes for you. And it's horrible.
I was reading his statement, Kovachev's, Andre, earlier, again, member of the European Parliament from Bulgaria. He really is a son of a bitch. He's just a
He's
nasty.
really over-invested in this thing.
Yeah, he's just a nasty little prick.
I mean, imagine any other European country which was, objectively on the side of the Nazi regime. I mean, you can't not acknowledge this. I mean, this is really out there.
Yeah.
And then they had this unforeseen consequence. So now they're being made to look like Hungary or Poland in European terms because they're a conservative party in power. There are protests. It might be that the left wants to open another migrant route or just topple the conservatives and install the socialists. They believe it's a good chance to do this, and there is obviously a powerful mechanism to do this in the European Parliament. They kept attacking Gruevski, they keep attacking Orban, the Polish guys, conservatives. So now Bulgaria is the current target, and what's the problem? As usual, it's the rule of law. So now they say Borisov is violating the rule of law, the prosecutor is in his pocket, he's not investigating corruption on the part of the government, blah, blah, blah. It's absolutely overblown. I mean, we've seen these people and how they act before. But they say to support this thesis, they go for any case where Bulgaria does not respect international verdicts, and they point to the European Court of Human Rights. And there is 80 verdicts by this court which Bulgaria did not honor, and 4 or 5 of them are ethnic Macedonians in Pirin, Macedonia, which is now part of Bulgaria, of course, who just wanted to set up an organization, a cultural group, protection of Macedonian heritage, a Macedonian political party as well, which would then demand that they be recognized as a minority. And Bulgaria has a strict policy of non-recognition of minorities. Even the Turks, who are obviously much more different, you couldn't mistake them for Bulgarians. Even they cannot have a Turkish party. It has to be called the Movement for Freedoms and Liberties. Right. Macedonia has a much more relaxed approach, but they refuse to recognize our.
Yeah.
Well, we are an outlier in the Balkans, so actually, to be fair, Bulgaria is now an outlier if you look at them. And Greece, Serbia would accept a Macedonian, an Albanian party, even give preferential quotas for members of parliament. Bulgaria and Greece would not. And so they refuse, their own citizens from setting up an organization under a name they don't like. The European Court of Human Rights says, obviously, you have to allow this. In response, Macedonia would ban Bulgarian citizens, ethnic Bulgarians who are Macedonian citizens, to set up an organization. So we have a similar, while we allow Albanians, Serbs, Greeks, Vlachs, whoever, to set up a cultural organization here, because Bulgaria would not allow this, we went reciprocal on them, even though in general we allow this. But the European Court of Human Rights says, okay, you're wrong and you're wrong. Eventually we allowed, I think we allowed the Aratko organization to set up, and it's not, generally not a problem for people to state that they're Bulgarians, but Bulgaria will not allow us. So now the members of European Parliament demand of Bulgaria to honor all the verdicts, including these several that target that reflect to Macedonians, and Boyko is ballistic over this. I mean, part of this is make pretend, because he's pointing to the socialists in Bulgaria and he says, these are your allies in the European Parliament who want this from us, to accept that there is a Macedonian minority. This is another national betrayal on the part of you socialist scumbags. But he's also angry over this, and he was tearing into Bujar Osmani, who's an Albanian. I mean, what
Right.
did he have to do with anything? And Macedonia did not raise the issue. Some green and socialist members of the European Parliament did. But it's, very hilarious, the timing is perfect for, to make an even bigger mess out of their relations with Zaev. So it's all coming to a head
Yeah.
at the same time.
And Zaev he's supposed to go to Bulgaria sometime in the next couple of weeks, month or something like that.
TBD. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think he's. I mean, we're supposed to have in early November some kind of a joint event, which was supposed to mean like, look how well we cooperate, and there was going to be like French and German and all the other regional countries representatives at this thing, but I don't know if this is going to go ahead at this point.
I think it should be on November 3rd, which is our election day here, just to make it a real total mess of everything. So
Yeah. Oh,
I got my ballot yesterday in the mail. So
it's now a swing state, apparently, Arizona.
apparently
right?
we are, yes, unfortunately. We are the home of Barry Goldwater, and the largely independent thinking and very conservative and traditional, and we'll see. But anyway, yes. So yeah, you should. He should go over there on November 3rd, I think. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
this is great.
yeah. TBD. To be determined. Remains to be seen how this whole thing plays out. But you were mentioning, Cvetin, a little bit earlier there about how these are former communists. Maybe they still are communists in many ways.
Oh yeah, in their heart, yes.
Yeah, and as I mentioned in the opening monologue, obviously with a far left communist socialist mindset, that applies not only to their the way they govern and the lack of the rule of law and the way they treat the Ministry of Justice and things of that nature, but it also relates to the economy. And no communist country has ever been able to become successful economically, because socialism is a failed ideology in every way, shape, and form, especially on issues of fiscal policy and economics. And as I mentioned, I gave out just one statistic there on the FDI, and the government has been chronically weak in trying to attract foreign direct investment. But there's a lot of other statistics, and I think, what was it? The World Bank just put out a report, and just a couple of we'll dive into that, but just a couple of statistics from that. The World Bank reports that 17% of all Macedonians live in poverty, with a daily salary of just $5.50, which is just astounding. The debt, let's see, the government debt,
The debt
almost
is the big one, yeah.
60% for 2020 and 2021. What was the other one? The mortality rate.
Oh, it's the worst. By far in the Balkans, we need to go to like a densely populated industrial country with huge cities like Belgium to get anywhere close our numbers.
Yeah, just obviously, as I mentioned in the opening monologue, some of this has to do with the coronas, and every country is being hit by that. Some countries are recovering more than others, but when you combine the fact that you've been hit by this pandemic and the economy has shut down either by directive of the government or voluntarily by private businesses, when you combine that with their already leftist agenda of high taxes, high debt, massive government spending, etc., it's a recipe for disaster, and people are hurting.
Yeah, on an economy of 10 billion, slightly over 10 billion, we're going to have a deficit of 8 point something percent, almost a billion just for this year.
Wow.
And over the entire Zaev term, it's like 2 billion, concluding with this year, is going to be 2 billion added to the deficit, to the debt, to
To the
the
debt,
total.
right, yeah.
We call it public debt. This is government debt. I think all the government, like all the municipalities and all the institutions you set up to cover the debt of the central government, it's going to reach 60% of GDP. And this is par the course for any developed country, but for a poor developing country in the Balkans, this is absolutely unsustainable.
Yeah. Say what you want about the former government of Vomero Dopamine, but at least on the economy, Macedonia was doing much better than it is now. Obviously, it was salaries were increasing, debt was decreasing, taxes. It was Vomero Dopamine that implemented the flat tax of I think 10% on both individuals and companies. And I know this government this government wanted to get rid of it and then didn't. I can't remember.
They legally did. They gave up on it, and then it was so crazy. I think they even had like a government order to suspend implementation, and then they were told they can't do it. So eventually, they through parliament they suspended the. We're still keeping the increased tax rate. I think it went up to 15 or 20%, depending on your income bracket. But then they said we're suspending this for some time. And now I think they're suspending it indefinitely because they realized that's all they need to collapse the economy. It's never happened before, we had two companies give up on an agreed investment in one of these industrial zones, which Gruevski set up. Yeah. One is Albanian pharma company, one is German Kessler, which operates in Macedonia but was supposed to expand car parts, electromotors for automobiles. And so before we would have a company announce an investment and then back out. But this is the first time two companies have signed a contract with an industrial zone. Like they had the lot of land set out, groundbreaking ceremony, everything, and then they give up. So this has never happened before.
Wow.
So this is just like an indication of how bad things are going, not to mention that no other companies are lining up for to take their place.
Right. Wow. And then you've got, and now going back on the kind of the coronavirus, I know last week Zaev basically said that companies that are struggling, they're just going to be allowed to fail, and there's not going to be any assistance for them.
I'm not sure who he. Practically he announced no more stimulus. There is some current stimulus. The government insists they had like 3 or 4 rounds of stimulus, but most of this was spending, like vouchers you give, like a credit card to retirees before the election. So this 1 billion in deficit which we have for this year, practically, it was borrowed and then distributed to some of it went to companies to keep their employees, but most of this went just for spending for the general population before the elections to get them to vote in favor of Zaev. And then immediately everybody had to pay the money back through higher electricity prices and, just general lack of opportunity and 40,000 jobs lost, etc. So they spend the money, not much to show for in terms of actually, supporting and keeping businesses alive to maybe transition to online shopping if, that some businesses could be saved like this. And now Zaev practically told them no more, don't expect any more stimulus. You will be allowed to fail, which is a good free market principle, but, he spent the money for this. And, he's also talking about firing 1/5 of public sector employees.
Right.
And building infrastructure with this. Again, a sound free market principle, ideally done during a growing economy, not during a total societal collapse.
Mhm.
And he has a horrible record in actually building any capital infrastructure. He only managed to finish two highways, which Gruevski built. One was 99% finished, one was 80% finished when Zaev took over. We have one German, one Spanish company building a proper motorway to Prilep, and another building the railway to Bulgaria, which is essential. Back out of the country, leave the country, throw up their arms, say you're impossible to work with. Uh, in between the lines, they said we're being extorted. We can't work with these idiots. So they haven't built anything, and he's now just saying we fire public sector employees, and which he may do, probably people who are from VMRO or perceived as such, and then
Right.
not actually divert the money toward infrastructure, but actually just give it as handouts, which he was doing since since April. And just as a side note, listen, the corona numbers, they're horrible. This is now the third, fourth wave, but this is now for real. We have like almost 400 people getting infected each day. Previously, it was 250 at most. Now we had 390 yesterday out of 2,600 tests. Today we have a decline, like 380, but they only did 1,600 tests, almost 1,000 less. So it's getting really bad. The government banned, now they're banning even having these winter parties where, tied to a feast of a Christian saint where, like Saint Nikolai, everybody, the whole family gathers. Now there is a ban that we can't have more than 4 people invited as guests to a house at any moment. And we have a ban on live music in cafes, so basically no cafes. We have a new mandate to wear a mask in the open, in the street, by yourself, like an idiot. You're supposed to wear it just in case you accidentally meet somebody on the street, and start talking to the person. And the one of the 2 main clinics in Skopje which treat the patients is full. There is no room. They're setting up like a military field hospital next to it. So things are getting really bleak here in terms of the corona.
Yeah, it seems to me, and I know we've talked about this before, but it seems to me that their economic plan, the economic plan of the government, is we have to get into the European Union as quickly as possible because then we will be showered with gifts and money and EPA funds and everything else from the European Union, and that seems to be their strategy, which isn't a strategy at all.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. One thing I want to kind of on the economy, and I want to slightly switch subjects here to a part of the economy that's near and dear to my heart because I've been reading about this lately, and that is Macedonia's fabulous wines and the grape growing regions. And I know that the farmers are not getting the prices they need for their grapes, but that's because demand has gone down, if I understand that correctly. And I don't know why, in at least over here during the coronas, when everybody's stuck indoors, the demand for booze has gone up.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why the demand has gone down, and that's and Macedonia exports a lot of its wine, both in bulk and in bottles, and I that would assume then that the demand has gone down. I don't quite understand that. Of course, it's not just the wine, but the grapes are used to make Macedonian spirits such as mastika and rakia. But what do you hear? What's the latest? Because I would hate to see these farmers basically go bankrupt or turn their land over for development or something like that, because that's one of that's a cultural and it's part of Macedonia's heritage, cultural heritage. It's certainly a strong, significant part of the economy. What's the latest that you hear on that, just on the farmers?
Yeah, it was a disaster. I mean, there is obviously the consumption grape, for eating. That the prices were, at least from my end, at the retail in Skopje, they were okay. They had like 40-50 dinars a kilo. But the grapes for for wine making, for bottling, I mean, this happens every year. It happens that the farmers say that they're still waiting for this or that winery to pay them for the grapes they delivered like 2 years ago. So they have another odd job working in some of the factories opened under Gruevski in the wine region. There's a bunch of them. And then, this is like your extra bonus you expect at the end of the, year or maybe the next year, but you still have it coming. At some point, you expect that the winery will bottle it and sell it eventually, and you'll get your money. But this year it was a complete disaster. They said, like, farmers said, we only get like 2 dinars per kilogram. So, you'll get it eventually, but it's absolutely not worth your while to plant again next year because they say we need like 15 dinars to produce it. We may get a subsidy of up to 15 dinars, so, cover our costs, but then, we're not making any money for the labor invested, like two dinars, we are better off going working in the factory full time, or just, as many do in these regions, go to Italy and work in their vineyards. I'm not sure what happened, whether demand is down. It would happen often that there is a glut of grapes and that the prices are not good, but at least the subsidies kept people afloat. And I'm not sure if this, how long this will be sustainable. And of course, Zaev himself is, his family business is buying wholesale farm products, selling them around. It's very clear, that as he controls all walks of business in the country now, marijuana is one business, construction materials, construction, actual construction. I'm pretty sure that he's tightening the screws on the farmers to maximize profits. He is by now that powerful to limit competition, to threaten a winery which may offer a bigger price, to not do it, to shutter. I mean, one winery owner in Stip, proper, significant winery, he publicly accused Zaev of extortioning money from him, racketeering. So, I mean, it's pretty clear that he can do this.
Well, I know that, years ago when Zaev was mayor in Strumica, he threatened my friend Vase, the owner of Grozd, which produces wine and Macedonia's famous mastika. Zaev openly threatened him, but, as mayor, I forgot what the specific issue was, but it doesn't surprise me. It'd be very interesting to see to do a deep dive into the Zaev family business and to see just what it is they own and control. I know there was some news out of Tetovo, I guess, about a shopping center that his family was involved in as well. So, plus you mentioned the marijuana business. I don't think Big Mike has been there lately, but yeah, his family holdings in the economy are significant and very much against what a government official should be involved in.
Did we not discuss the shopping center in Tetovo?
No, we haven't. What?
Oh crap! No, that's a big one.
Okay. Let's talk
about it. Well, this is developing and expanding. Maybe this was the 1 week when we skipped the podcast. So this is like a Montenegrin businessman, Secret Service Montenegrin guy who has then moved into business, as things happen in the Balkans often. And there was an audio leak before the elections in which he's talking to Kichevets, this notorious guy from the racket scandal, a fixer for Zaev, practically, that he paid him, listen, Buster, I paid you 300,000 euros to secure a meeting with me and Zaev. We need to discuss the real estate deal in Tetovo and in Stip. There are two deals. One is apartments and a shopping mall in Tetovo, where, many Albanians are moving in around the university and whatever. And, he stands to make huge money here because it's an old furniture plant he wants, which is defunct now, huge piece of land, he can build like an apartments for about 8,000 people, which is ginormous.
Wow.
In a city which already struggles with water, not enough water pollution and everything. It's estimated 200 million would be the revenue, total turnover in the deal. And in Stip, he wants to build like hydro plants. So he says, I paid you this money, you secured a meeting with Zaev, that's fine, but he wanted money from me. Now you say you can make another meeting, but he will only racketeer more money from me because he keeps saying he needs money to buy voters for the referendum you're having. I'm not having none of it. Let him seal the deal, and then I will pay 2 million, and then I will give real estate in the project, and then I will give land and whatever you want, but let's first seal the deal. So this is the conversation. And we have the elections. Zaev forms the government, and immediately, the day after the government is formed, the Titova Council, where SDSM and DUI have the majority, as in the government, approve the development for this guy. So they're caught, before the elections, they're caught, red-handed, planning this deal with a notorious mobster who is going to prison, supposed to go in prison in November over the racket scandal, talking about Zaev, how money have flowed between the businessmen through this intermediary to Zaev and back. And still they're so brazen, they approve the deal. And Zaev is interviewed now, and he says, yes, of course, I initiated, he's even boastful, I told the council to do this, like this is a big investment, we need to do this. Yeah, but you were caught, the businessman is saying he's paying money just to meet you, 300,000 just for a meeting with you. And, optics, much. And most importantly, I mean, this would be like business as usual in the country, but except that this guy is a huge financier of the current pro-Russian, or allegedly pro-Serbian government in Montenegro. He was named as very likely funding that, remember when all the media in the West and intelligence agencies got all messed up in 2016 that Russia is planning a coup in Montenegro on the day of elections. So this guy was allegedly funding it, and he was allegedly supposed to be interior minister in the government that would be formed under the coup.
Right.
Miodrag Davidovich Dak. So now Zaev, Mr. NATO, Mr. Pro-Western, Mr. I'm blocking Russian influence in the region. He's giving a 200 million euro deal to this guy. And, it's very clear that this money, if, they're turned around, they would go to support. This would be like, for the first time, a proper pro-Russian investment in Macedonia. People would always say, okay, what's the Russian influence? Well, there is very little gas, maybe a dozen gasoline pumping stations, and that's it. Yeah. We export some veggies, and Zaev, including Zaev personally, exports agriculture products and ivory to Russia, and Alkaloid exports some medicine, not enough to garner, the financial turnover to garner like a proper pro-Russian option, to fund a pro-Russian option in Macedonia. And now Zaev is delivering to a pro-Russian businessman on a silver platter the funds needed to form an actual, to fund media, political party, whatever. So, yeah, this is really...
And of course, as long as Zaev and his ilk say, NATO, 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 EU, 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 the West will completely ignore these things. So it doesn't really matter to them.
No response from the usual suspects who would normally jump at any sign of pro-Russian.
That's because there's a word for this. It's called hypocrisy. So, but that's what's to be expected from the State Department and the European Union and NATO itself. Oh, I did see that Zaev actually went to Brussels this past week to meet with Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General. I watched
former
that.
KGB agent.
Sorry?
And former registered KGB agent.
I watched the interview, and I thought it was just if you would watch it with the sound off, you would have been an interesting interview, because Stoltenberg looked just totally irritated with Zaev and his hand gestures and everything else, and he's a flat delivery, pretty much. But I don't know. I thought it was interesting just from that standpoint.
He called Stoltenberg the Secretary Generale.
Oh, goodness. And it was on Zaev's birthday, too, I think. So.
They had a cake blowing ceremony. Well, we have now one of Zaev's very important members of parliament, actually DUI member of parliament. He was supposed to switch to SDSM this notoriously corrupt mayor of Plasnica. He has the coronas, and it's actually pretty bad, apparently.
Oh.
And another one has it. Another SDSM member of parliament has it. So we're now on the verge of quarantining parliament. Zaev demands they work online because, he does not have the majority now even to call a session
Right.
without the opposition, with two of his men quarantining. He only has 62 votes. He needs 61 to schedule just a session.
They can.
He's going to get blocked.
Yeah, no, they can go ahead and call it anyway. The numbers don't matter for them anymore. So, and the U.S. Embassy will approve it.
But if I was Stoltenberg, I wouldn't. Yeah, definitely. But if I were Stoltenberg, I wouldn't try that cake. After Zaev blowing on it.
Oh dear, yeah. Well, and then actually we could do a whole. I don't think we have time for it today, but maybe in the future, as it relates to the economy, and we just hit upon it there. But all of the other scandals involving economic benefits to the government, such as or just other various scandals. For instance, the finance minister withdrawing 250,000 euros from Euro Standard Bank before it collapsed, and things of that nature. So. But again, we don't expect the quote unquote Western elites, the U.S. Embassy, State Department, the EU, etc., to say anything about this stuff. So, as long as Zaev does their bidding, then everybody is happy on that side of the ledger.
Yeah. And in return, we had Vimera had their messages on October 11th. Both Mitskovsky and to an even greater degree Gruevsky in their comments. They, as Zaev was careful not to mention who the enemy was in 1941 and etc. Both the current and the former Vimera leader, they were not, they didn't go off on a tangent in Bulgaria. There's really just a sad situation, and even I'm really uneager to discuss it. It's just pitiful. But they did make a serious comment. We joke about the way the country is going, but they both noted that, listen, Gruevsky said we have more political prisoners now than we had in 1941 under occupation. Under the Macedonian government, he used scare quotes around Macedonian.
Right.
We have, under fascism, we didn't have as many political prisoners as we do now, and these are the people who are targeted, like Gordana Yankulovska now in prison, for protecting their country, for wanting to preserve their name, their identity, their culture, and a right to self-determination as an ethnicity. And, this is a deeply, deeply troubled country, very, very sick country and a very sick regime. And the fact that, the embassies here support them so uncritically, and we're yet to see, even worse from the types of people who work here in the embassies now after Euro elections, all the unprincipled actions in the run-up to Euro election and afterwards when, we see Twitter is going to get shut down, this whole Russia investigation in the US, just as we were here accused of Russian sympathies. And people were being arrested in the U.S. for the same allegation, while now actual Russian crimes, both on part of, crimes, Russian connections, both on part of Biden, which is actually a crime, what his son was apparently doing, and on Zaev here, they're both ignored. So, this is just the hypocrisy of it all. This is not going to end well.
No, it won't. And it's cliche to compare the United States in its current form, or the West, I should say, to Rome. The decline and fall of the Roman Empire, given. But I just binged. Most people that watch TV binge on drama and comedy and things like that. I binged on a historical 24-part series on the rise of Rome. By a professor out of University of Wisconsin Green Bay, which was fascinating. But it was just, and it got down to the decline of the Republic and the rise of Octavian, Caesar Augustus, and then the Roman Empire. And and the question at the very last of the 24 series was, why did the Roman Republic decline? And all of the usual reasons, whether it's the people themselves became corrupt, and the moral degradation, and at the political level, the rivalry between the politicians, or the fact that the institutions failed. All of these answers that historians have talked about and debated for years for the Roman Republic apply to the West today. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, you're mentioning, the how Macedonia is in a real sorry state of affairs. Well, misery loves company. The West is joining you. We're all going down at the same time. So,
did you caught the Joe Rogan Douglas Murray?
Oh yes, that was wonderful. Yes, that was.
They had this glorious. They were so blindsided. It was gloriously blindsided. They discussed how Rome collapsing, and then somehow the issues of depravity appear. Sexual morals, family values, etc. And they said, well, what is it with countries when they begin to decline, just like the U.S. now with all this, child porn stuff and on Netflix and whatever. And they say, well, what is this kink about a civilization collapsing? And then as it does, it develops a taste for these types of topics and issues and.
That is fascinating that at the end of empires they get really concerned with gender and hermaphrodites and those things. Like that's universal?
Well, it certainly happens at the end of the Greek and Roman empires.
Wonder what that is.
Well, it's backwards actually. You develop this, your morals erode. You develop these tendencies, at least in some significant share of the population and the culture. And then your country collapses as a result. So it's not like you're going down for unrelated reasons, and then suddenly you get all perverted in your morals. But actually, you pervert your morals, and then suddenly, as a result, your legions begin losing battles, and your economy begins to tank, and you can no longer keep rebellions and provinces in check. So it was very funny how they were so close to the target, but then missed it completely.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, in that spirit, let me just, before we go to our farmer's pick here, let me just quote Benjamin Franklin, one of America's founding fathers, in his final speech to the U.S. Constitutional Convention. He says, in these sentiments, sir, I agree to this Constitution with all its faults, if they are such, because I think a general government necessary for us, and there is no form of government but what may be a blessing to the people if well administered. And believe farther that this is likely to be well administered for a course of years. Here's the key part. And can only end in despotism, as other forms have done before it, when the people shall become so corrupted as to need despotic government, being incapable of any other. So the despotic government is a result of the people becoming so corrupted that they need it. So, anyway, that's let's go to something more positive to end this podcast. I got a farmer's pick. It's a little bit different this time. This is a young Macedonian photographer from Lake Ohrid that I follow on the Twitters. Riste Spiroski, and we'll just put his handle in there in the show notes. But he's 17 years old, and he just does these absolutely gorgeous photographs of various parts of Macedonia, a lot of them focused on Lake Ohrid, of course. And he's just a good ambassador for Macedonia. And I think that's worthy of praise and admiration, and plus our listeners will get a kick if they have the Twitter's account of looking at some of the beautiful photography that he captures Macedonia and the Macedonian spirit in his photography. So that's our farmer's pick.
And I'll include some of the goals from the Macedonia Kosovo game we played
Oh yes.
earlier this week. Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah.
We
Congratulations.
actually beat Kosovo, and we have a chance. And next in November we play Georgia, and we have a chance to actually, if we beat them, to actually advance to the European Championship if it's ever held, and in whatever form. But this would be a historic first. I mean, this would be a really big one.
Yeah, I think as we record, you're playing, or you just finished playing Estonia. So
Yeah, 3-3. They were leading 3-1 until the 80th minute.
Is it 3-3 the final?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, so it's a tie, a draw.
3-3. Absolutely.
I don't know what that means, but
It was a good one.
in terms of advancing or not, but
It's
there you have it.
everybody gets a medal.
Hooray!
Yeah.
All right. Good talking with you, Cvetin.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Take care.